Gabriel Vance, a millionaire accustomed to absolute control, found himself unexpectedly stopped at a humble market deep in the American South. Not by the vibrant scent of fresh produce or the charm of the makeshift stalls, but by a face. A little girl with braided hair and a violet dress, an uncanny resemblance to his late ex-wife Clara, who had passed away years ago. From that very instant, the past he had buried under layers of silence and guilt began to scream. And the life he thought he commanded would never be the same again. The southern sun beat down relentlessly on the cracked asphalt as Gabriel's luxury car sputtered and died in the middle of the dusty road. The Audi's air conditioning cut out, and the sudden silence revealed the muffled sounds of a small, improvised market just ahead. Wooden stalls, dust swirling in the air, the sweet aroma of ripe mangoes mixed with the scent of sweat. Gabriel grunted, annoyed by the car's failure and the stifling heat gluing his Italian suit to his skin. He checked his phone. No signal. He tried the GPS. Frozen. It was then, as he looked up, that he saw her, a girl, perhaps 8 years old, sat behind a rustic table carefully stacking guavas. Her brown braids, the way she crinkled her nose while counting change, her lopsided smile. He froze. The image was a cruel mirror. The girl was identical to Clara. She lifted her eyes, smiled, and in that moment, Gabriel's world silently collapsed. Gabriel Vance built his fortune with sheer discipline, cold resolve, and relentless ambition. At 42, he owned one of the most luxurious hotel chains in the Southeast, lived in a penthouse spanning 2 floors in Atlanta, and jetted off in his private plane for meetings in New York and Miami. But what no one saw was the profound loneliness carefully camouflaged by balance sheets and corporate protocol. Since Clara's death 3 years prior, Gabriel had never truly been himself. They had met young when they had nothing. Clara was a literature student, a dreamer, an idealist. He, a mattress salesman with giant ambitions. They married early, amidst shared dreams and simple dinners. But with time, their love was slowly suffocated by unspoken demands. The greatest of these, children. Gabriel desperately wanted them. Clara couldn't conceive. There were 2 years of endless attempts, doctor's visits, and crushing frustrations, until the silence between them became louder than any argument. The divorce came in cold legal papers. After a final confrontation neither could ever forget. 3 months later, Clara suffered a car accident in a rural area and died before any reconciliation was possible. Gabriel received the news with a bitter mix of disbelief and guilt. He buried his pain in work and never spoke her name again. Until now. On that dusty road, before that little girl selling fruit, Clara was there again, in her almond-shaped eyes, in the way she tilted her head when listening, in her singular off-center smile. Everything was too similar to be a mere coincidence. Gabriel approached slowly, as if treading through a dream. "Good morning, sir," the girl said politely. "Would you like some guavas?" He opened his mouth, but his voice failed him. What's your name?" "Isadora, sir. Isadora Hayes." Gabriel's heart stopped for a second. Hayes, Clara's maiden name. The world spun slowly. His hands were sweating. His mind raced with possibilities. Was she Clara's daughter? If so, why had Clara never told him? It was there, at that fruit stand, that everything began to unravel. Gabriel had always believed that success and stability would bring happiness. He envisioned a spacious home, a perfect family, children running through the halls of a debt-free, argument-free household. Clara, on the other hand, was made of poetry and intuition. She yearned for time, presence, authenticity. When they married, both believed they could build a world together. In their early years, they lived simply, but with intense passion. She would grade papers on the sofa while he planned how to open his own business. They stayed up late, talked for hours, made plans with their eyes closed. But everything started to shift when they decided to have children. 2 years of tests, fertility clinics, and unanswered questions. Examinations showed Clara struggled to conceive. but medicine couldn't explain how much it affected their marriage. Gabriel grew more anxious with each attempt. He felt frustrated, powerless. He started working more, talking less. Clara in turn retreated. She began writing in diaries, isolating herself, smiling less. The first great fall wasn't a shout. It was the silence. They tried therapy, vacations, forced dinners, but the pain was deep, born of small disappointments. Gabriel wanted to continue treatments, adopt, persist. Clara said she was tired of being a project. "I'm not a baby factory, Gabriel," she said during one of their last dinners. "I'm the woman you loved, or used to be." He responded with the cruelest silence he'd ever given. The check arrived, and they left in separate cars. 3 weeks later, Clara filed for divorce. Gabriel signed the papers as if finalizing a business contract. Clara disappeared from his radar shortly after. He only heard she had returned to the rural town where she grew up. He considered looking for her, but his pride held him back. Months later, he received the call. An accident. Clara had died alone on a dirt road. No goodbyes, no answers. Gabriel buried that pain with the precision of someone burying a deep secret. That's why, standing before that girl with braids and a crooked smile, the ground seemed to vanish beneath him. Isadora had Clara's maiden name. She had her eyes. She had the time Gabriel had lost forever, and he still thought he could fix everything. That night, Gabriel didn't go straight home. He parked his car at a humble motel, the only one nearby, and spent hours staring at the ceiling, the wall fan humming monotonously. The girl's image wouldn't leave his mind. The way she carefully arranged the fruits, the way she furrowed her brow when doing calculations, her sweet, respectful, firm tone of voice. It was as if Clara had returned as a child, but what hurt most wasn't the resemblance. It was the question that settled, insistent, cruel. What if she's your daughter? The next morning, before heading back to Atlanta, Gabriel turned around. He parked his car near the market again. Isadora was there, helping an older woman set up her stall. The woman looked to be in her 60s, with calloused hands and hair pulled back in a low bun. "Are you her grandmother?" Gabriel asked awkwardly. After buying 2 pumpkins, he had no idea how to cook. The woman looked him up and down. "I am. Is there a problem?" "None at all. It's just, I knew her mother." "Clara." The woman paled. She clutched the edge of the stall, and for a second Gabriel thought she might faint. "Your name?" she asked, her voice now laden with something between anger and fear. "Gabriel Vance." She turned away without another word. She walked into the small wooden house behind the market and slammed the door shut. Gabriel stood there, holding the pumpkins, as if they were the only solid things in the universe. Throughout the week, he could barely work. He cancelled meetings, turned off his phone, and locked himself in his office. He rummaged through old documents, photo albums, newspaper clippings. He searched for any clue, any mention of a pregnancy he never knew existed. At the end of the week, he made a decision. He called Jonas Miller, a former police officer who now worked as a private investigator. They had worked together on a fraud case years ago. "Jonas, I need you for something personal, delicate, and urgent." "Shoot." "A girl. Her name is Isadora Hayes, 8 years old, lives in the countryside with her grandmother. Her mother was my ex-wife. I need to know everything. Birth date, registration, medical history. If possible, DNA." "Understood. But investigating a minor is complicated, Gabriel. You'll need a good justification. I'll justify it with the truth. Maybe she's my daughter." There was a long pause on the other end of the line. "I'll get back to you in a few days." That weekend, Gabriel returned to the market. He dressed more simply. A linen shirt, light pants, sneakers. No suit, expensive watch, or imported car. He wanted to blend in, but it was too late. Isadora recognized him the second he approached. "Hi, Mr. Pumpkin Man," she said excitedly. "Today we have cashews, you know. Grandma picked them early." Gabriel smiled, touched by her spontaneity. "I came to buy, but also to talk, if I can." Isadora pulled out a plastic chair, all excited. You can sit. We love to chat here." And they talked about the fruits, about her school, about her favorite cartoons, and about Clara. Isadora spoke of her mother with a sparkle in her eyes, as one speaks of a legend. "Grandma says my mom was very smart, that she wanted to be a teacher, that she loved me very much, even before I was born." Gabriel felt a knot in his throat. "And your father?" he risked. Her face clouded for an instant. "I never knew him. Grandma says he was a city man. He left when he found out about the pregnancy." The words fell like a sentence. He stood there, motionless, watching the girl fold paper bags with the same care Clara used with her books. When she smiled again, he felt like crying, but he couldn't. That night he returned to the motel. He sat in the dark room and stayed there, alone for hours. The thin walls let through the sound of another guest's television. Life went on, but he was stuck in time. He no longer knew who he was, or where he belonged. The only certainty was, if she's my daughter, I lost 8 years that will never come back. Have you ever felt like time stole something from you that you should never have lost? As if a choice or an omission changed everything. If this part left you with a lump in your throat, leave a yes in the comments. I need to know if this story is moving you too. The result arrived on a cloudy morning. Jonas, the detective, called, his voice graver than usual. "Gabriel! I got what you asked for." And Isadora was born on February 16th, 2015. Rural Georgia. Mother, Clara Hayes. Father, undeclared. Gabriel took a deep breath. "That much I expected. What about the rest? School records, health clinic records, everything indicates she was raised by her grandmother since she was a baby. Clara died in childbirth, Gabriel. Acute hemorrhage. She didn't stand a chance." The silence on the other end was crushing. "And Clara, why did she never tell me? According to neighbors, she arrived in town already pregnant from a difficult marriage with a rich man. No one knew the details. But there's more." Jonas hesitated. "Clara left a letter. Only one, with her grandmother. For the girl's father if he ever shows up." Those were her words. Gabriel felt his legs give out. Clara had left something for him. "Jonas, can you get a copy?" "No. The letter is with her grandmother, and from what I understand, she'll only hand it over if you look her in the eye." Gabriel hung up the phone, his heart pounding in his chest. This was more than curiosity, it was a summons. That night, he returned to Miss Celia's house. There were no more doubts, no more excuses. He stopped before the crooked wooden gate and took a deep breath. The old woman opened the door slowly. She said nothing, just stared at him. "I know," he said finally. "I know everything, and I think it's time for you to tell me the rest." She gestured for him to enter. The living room was modest but welcoming. On the wall, a photo of Clara holding baby Isadora. Gabriel had to look away. Miss Celia went to a cabinet, opened an old drawer, and took out a yellowed envelope. "Clara knew this day might come, and she left this. She only made me promise one thing." "What?" "That I would only give it to you if you were ready, and looking into my eyes." She extended the envelope. Gabriel took it with trembling hands. He didn't know if it would work. He didn't know what would come next. But for the first time, he wanted to try. Gabriel didn't read the letter that night. He tucked the envelope inside his jacket, as if safeguarding a piece of the past that still hurt too much to touch. But its weight stayed with him the entire time. The next morning, instead of returning to Atlanta, he stopped at a pharmacy in the neighboring town and bought a DNA collection kit. He also bought some stationery, colored pencils, and a small box of chocolates, as if he could compensate for years of absence with simple gestures. He returned to the market with his heart in his throat. Isadora was there, as always, meticulously arranging the fruits with childlike precision. When she saw him, she smiled. "Mr. Pumpkin Man is back. Today we have plantains." Gabriel sat down slowly, as if not wanting to startle a skittish animal. "Isadora, can I ask you a difficult question?" She stopped counting coins and looked at him seriously. "You can. Would you like to know who your father was?" The girl frowned. "Grandma says he left before I was born, and that it wasn't a good idea to keep remembering. And you? What do you feel? She thought for a moment, then answered with the maturity of someone who had heard many silences. Sometimes I imagine what it would be like, if he would be nice, if he would look like me. Gabriel took a deep breath. Would you be willing to do a test? A simple test, to find out if I might be your father? Isadora was silent. After a few seconds, she smiled. You look like my mom, in the way you look when you're serious, and you smell like expensive perfume just like her. Is that good or bad? It's just strange. She thought a little longer and then nodded. Okay. But only if I can do it with Grandma right next to me. Gabriel nodded, relieved. Of course. Everything with her permission. Isadora smiled again, and for the first time Gabriel felt no fear. He felt a new kind of hope, fragile but alive. 2 days later, Gabriel returned to Miss Celia's house with the lab technician he hired to do the home collection. He wanted everything to be discreet, comfortable for Isadora. The girl, as always, was calm, curious but unafraid. The technician explained everything calmly. She opened her mouth, smiled when the swab touched her cheek. That tickles! Gabriel laughed. For the first time in years, he let out a genuine laugh. Miss Celia, however, remained serious. And if the result is positive? She asked, after the technician left. What exactly do you want, Gabriel? He hesitated. I want to get to know her, be around, help with whatever she needs, be a father. And what will you sacrifice for that? The question hit deep. Sacrifice. That was the word he avoided thinking about. That night, back in his luxurious Atlanta apartment, Gabriel walked through each room as if seeing it for the first time. Everything was expensive, beautiful, and empty. In the guest room, he found an old folder with divorce documents. There, among official papers and couples therapy receipts, he saw a handwritten note by Clara. If there's no room for a child here, there will never be room for us. He stood there for a long time, staring at the phrase. The next day, while driving, Gabriel mentally rehearsed how he would tell Isadora he was her father. But, along with the desire came the fear. What if she doesn't want me? What if she rejects me? What if she thinks I'm showing up too late? He thought about her childhood, the birthdays he missed, the scraped knees he couldn't tend to, the drawings she showed her grandmother and never a father. It was then that his phone rang. It was Jonas, the detective. Gabriel, the lab called. The result is ready. Gabriel felt the blood drain from his face. Well, positive, 99.9%. Isadora is your daughter. On the other end of the line, silence. Gabriel couldn't respond. He only felt it. The world now had a new name. Isadora. Gabriel arrived at Miss Celia's house with the envelope in his hand and his heart in his throat. Isadora waited for him sitting on the porch, her little legs swinging from the wicker chair, her teddy bear in her lap. She smiled when she saw him, as if it were just another Saturday. "Hi, Mr. Fruitman," she said playfully. Gabriel knelt in front of her. "Isadora, I have something very important to tell you." She widened her eyes, clutching her teddy bear. "What is it?" He took a deep breath. "I received the test result, the one you agreed to do with me." She became serious. "And?" Gabriel slowly opened the envelope and handed the paper to Miss Celia, who read it in silence. Her eyes welled up. "It's positive," she said softly. "You are his daughter." Isadora looked from one to the other, confused. Then she lowered her head and whispered, "So, you're my dad?" "I am," Gabriel replied, his voice trembling. "If you'll have me, I am." The girl said nothing for a few seconds. The silence was dense, sacred. Then she spoke, in a whisper. "Grandma always said my dad left because he didn't want me." Gabriel felt his chest sink. "Isadora, I swear on everything sacred. I never knew you existed. If I had known, I would never have left. Why didn't Mom tell you?" The question was simple, but it carried the weight of a lifetime. Gabriel sat beside her, his eyes wet. "Because we hurt each other deeply. We fought too much, and I think she was scared. Scared that I would only want to stay with her because of you. Scared that we would keep hurting each other, with you in the middle of it all." Isadora looked down. I wish I had known her. She was incredible, Gabriel said, and she loved you more than anything, I'm certain of it. Silence again. And then the question that broke his heart. And now, are you going to leave? Gabriel shook his head. Never again, she frowned. But what about your life in the big city? And your hotel, and your work? All that is still there. But, for the first time, I realize that none of it has value if I don't have someone to share it with. You want to live here. I want to be wherever you are. Isadora looked at her grandmother as if seeking permission. Miss Celia simply nodded, her eyes full. Then the girl slowly stood up, walked to Gabriel, and hugged him. For the first time, father and daughter truly found each other. He felt her fragile body against his, the scent of fruit and soap, and he understood. It didn't matter what he had lost. From that moment on, he would lose nothing more. Can I call you Daddy? Gabriel couldn't answer. He just nodded, his face hidden in his daughter's shoulder. There, on the simple porch of that country home, a new life began. 3 months later, Gabriel Vance woke up every day to the sound of Miss Celia's chickens in the neighboring yard. His new house, simple and cozy, was less than a mile from Isadora's, and that was all he needed. The luxurious Atlanta apartment, empty, the hotels, still running with his trusted team, his meeting schedule cut in half. But his time was now for Isadora. He took her to school, helped with her homework, learned recipes from Miss Celia. He discovered that his daughter loved math but was terrified of swimming, and that every night she asked for a story before bed. One time she looked at him and asked, "Daddy, are you happier now?" He didn't need to think, "I am. I've never been this happy." Because Gabriel discovered something not every successful man has the courage to admit. Having everything is different from having what truly matters. And the lesson Gabriel learned is one that perhaps speaks directly to you. Sometimes life gives us a second chance, but it never screams, it whispers. And it's up to us to have the courage to listen. Because in the end, it's not contracts that define our story. It's the hugs, the choices, and the moments we decide not to let slip away. If this story touched you in any way, please hit that like button now. For me, it's more than just a button. It's a sign that it's worth continuing to bring stories like this, and I love knowing who's on the other side of the screen. Tell me in the comments which city or state you're watching from. It creates a real connection between us. If you believe in the power of emotional and transformative stories, subscribe to the channel. We're just getting started, and your subscription makes all the difference. Oh, and don't leave now. Choose one of the 2 stories appearing on the screen. Click and continue with me in the next video. I'll see you there.